This video is the first explaining illness of a particular person by medical astrology. It is not a recognised form of analysis, whilst it dates back to before Jesus, where even the Magi astrologer priests followed the star to the special stable where he was born. It's been a study well overlooked. Whilst I have written a tutorial based on medical astrology, it becomes confused if you're not aware of the many areas astrology can cover. If you feel this video lacks understanding, the basics of astrology are in my earlier videos, which is where you may have to start. In this case, my daughter asked me to look into a girlfriend's chart. The girlfriend was suffering from metastatic cancer. For people who don't know what metastatic cancer is, it's where the cancer has gone from one part of the body to another. In saying that, I have come to believe operation should be the last option, especially since following astrology and finding how it can give you cures, including a particular way of making them, all of which I've outlined in the book How to Cure Others with Astrology, aided by the runes. I only use runes for weights and measurement. I believe each organ is there for a particular reason, and other organs have to work harder to compensate once it's gone, which is why I have gone into the areas I have. I did a volunteer radio program in the Blue Mountains, and I looked at every current affair issue, including health, and as I went along I was explaining each of the planets and what areas they ruled, and it became clear that it had beneficial effects on medicine and a correlation I could understand, which led me to understanding and going into medical astrology. Now, I've just brought up a chart here on the girl with metastatic cancer. Now, you notice here I have an area in yellow. That is outlining the Jupiter areas. Now, the girl had a resection done on her liver as well as her bowel. I won't be able to go into both, but I'll certainly try and explain the area of the liver. The first thing I look at is Jupiter, and Jupiter is seen on the left in yellow, and it happens to be in Aries. Then I have the dark areas. Now, the shorter arrow at the top is pointing to 9. This is a house, and it's a house position for Sagittarius, which the 9th house takes on its characteristic. And then the second arrow in the centre is pointing to Sagittarius, that rules the liver as well. So these are, you'll notice that I'm showing you 3 different aspects, but in that yellow area you'll note that there are 2 Jupiter signs. Now what I do when I look at a chart, I look at 3 separate areas, and it includes, if you look on the inner part of that yellow to the right, you'll see Jupiter in one circle. Now that is the natal. The outer circle, where the next Jupiter in that yellow part is the progressed sign. And then in actual print, you'll see I've written to the right, Saturn in Sagittarius. It has a big circle around it. That's showing you the transiting planets that are around there. So there is quite a lot to look at. But the main thing I look to and look for are the oppositions and squares. And if I have time, also the 150-degree angles, which often has an underlying effect. You'll see in this clip that I have in brown the oppositions, where there's Jupiter on the left, Uranus on the right and Saturn down below. Now, this becomes more complicated because of the 3 charts I have done. And it becomes more intense because the planets haven't moved very far. But in saying that, you'll find that the effects will change as the planets come to a certain planet and moves away from the degree of that planet. And so one time the Saturn may be blocking, the other time it could be trying to knock down the doors, so to speak. But let's move on. In this case, I gave no suggestion for foods which are in my book, because not all people are open to astrology in the first place. In fact, most of the Western world is not open to astrology because of religions putting the subject down and calling the subject blasphemous. But in fact, Christianity was formed by the Magi. But enough of that. Let's look to health. If I look at the latest operations the girl had to remove the cancer, it was bowel and liver resection, meaning part or all had been taken out. I wish I could have helped, but I find doctors will just throw my reports into the bin. In most cases, when looking at cancer, I look to the stomach or the esophagus and mammary glands. And this is where I believe the cancers can begin. They certainly can end there. In searching the web, I found that there are several different types of enzymes which are produced in the lining, each breaking down the food at various stages as the food travels the digestive tract. They are found and made in various organs in the digestive tract. Enzymes are made from proteins and are formed by different amino acids. This helps to break down the food, which starts from the mouth and follows the food path to the anus. It begins with the salivary glands in the mouth. Enzymes are what speed up chemical reaction inside the body. They are disrupted by temperature and pH, alkalines and acids, that is. I believe what I'm about to say is an important part to understanding this person's cancer and possibly others. But also, further on, I'll talk about the circulation, which I believe would be distributing the cancers around, which is another important part. Heat can activate the enzymes so that they procreate at an exceeding split level. But some researchers say if the pH level is high or low, with tests done with hydrogen peroxide, the enzymes become ineffective. Heat can activate the enzymes so that they procreate at an exceeding split level. But some researchers say if the pH level is high or low, with tests done with hydrogen peroxide, the enzymes become ineffective. But other researchers say that hydrochloric acid in the stomach brings the pH down to 1.2 so that it can digest food by the digestive enzymes. This makes me wonder if it is just a specific organ. Apparently, without enzymes that make protein and amino acids, all organs shut down. They must all work independently. That's what I've come to believe. Also, I read, as mentioned, that enzymes are made from amino acids, and yet they break down amino acids for them to be distributed to other parts of the body. The one thing that wasn't disputed was that heat could cause enzymes to accelerate. And the one thing I found very interesting is that in the girl's chart, there are heated planets hitting directly by square to this Cancer constellation. This could mean that the stomach's enzymes, which is meant to speed up chemical reaction, has, with the heat, set up a chain reaction causing irregular blood cells to attack the liver. As I go on, it might become clearer. The heat is what I'm particularly interested in because of the squaring constellation from Aries to Cancer and with the planets in those signs. But there's also other interesting factors. In the medical encyclopedias, I've read Cancer, the Moon and the 4th house all rule the Cancer illness. What we know about Cancer is that it is an out-of-control cell. To be precise, from the American Cancer Society, it states, it starts when stem cells grow out of control and crowd out normal cells. In doing this video, something else that's come to my consciousness is that cancer cells are free radical cells, meaning they are acting unpredictably. This brings in a planet I see in the girl's chart, in both natal and progress, is Uranus, which is prior to natal and progress Jupiter. Actually, I've got that wrong. It's transiting Uranus is prior to natal and progress Jupiter in Aries, and I'll give you the areas of this in a moment. And Jupiter is the ruler of the liver and squaring Saturn in Cancer. Saturn rules the formation of cells in the marrow associated with vertebrae. The marrow in the vertebrae creates a red and white marrow, which creates a red and white blood cells and platelets. It's concerning seeing it in Cancer with these aspects because it is the ruler of the opposite house, Capricorn. This is a hard-working area and the planet has the same influence. But in saying that, Saturn is what builds blockages. Blockages will depend on whether it is before or after another planet which is causing health problems. If there is a planet after it, it could mean that it would be affected by cholesterol or crystallization flowing into that particular area. And if it is actually after a squaring aspect, it could mean that it will be stopping the flow of what otherwise would have had no problem. I know that could be a bit confusing. To explain the positioning of these planets and to make them clearer, if we look at the chart to the left, you will see transiting Uranus, which I've written on the outside of the wheel in Aries. As with all transiting planets, the speed of these planets are varied. Uranus will be there for a relatively short time, approximately 3 weeks, on 1 degree. And if you look at the right, you will see what I've mentioned earlier, natal and progress Uranus in the 7th house. Houses are marked from 1 to 12 on the inner wheel. Uranus rules the circulation, and over the coming months, transiting Uranus would have been making a square to Saturn below in the 3rd house, and a direct opposition to natal and progress Uranus. Imagine that there are 2 rebel gangs against each other, and one person is trying to control them, who is a constant worrier. But in this case, it's within the person. Also, the one thing you need to know about the constellations are their characteristics. Each have specific roles, and explanations are in my first few videos. And to understand an illness, it helps to understand the person and Cancer constellation when there are planets in it for a person who's suffering from cancer, or the moon or the fourth house. They're the ones involved with cancer. This sign causes a person to worry, and she not only has Saturn in it, but also Mercury, which rules the thoughts. In astrology, the sun is the physical self. The brain, lungs and arms are ruled by Mercury. And when there are planets that are squaring and opposite, they will be the areas that will be worried about. Although the person will worry about those areas that are in conflict in her life, as it would appear. Uranus has to do with groups. If it's in the 12th house, as the transiting Uranus appears to be, on the left-hand side, as we see it, it will have to do with unpredictable sleeping habits and possibly excessive sweating with both natal and progress Jupiter in the 12th house. Sweating is a water sign because in the 12th house is ruled by Pisces as a rule, and it's a water sign. So that's where sweating comes into it. Then the two Jupiters being in the 12th house are both fire signs, as well as Aries being a fire sign. So the fire signs there are doubling of this effect. With Uranus, it would mean that heat would be mixed with air, because Uranus is an air sign. Now Jupiter, Sagittarius and 9th house all deal with the liver. Jupiter would bring liver juices into the muscles, as Aries rules the muscles and the red blood. The liver is meant to purify the blood, but it also gives expansive qualities that would make me wonder if the blood tests would show up high blood count because of the excessive amount of Jupiter being in Aries, which would cause an increase in blood cells. Also, if we start looking at degrees, you'll notice Jupiter's progress and natal degrees are seen on the left. It places natal Saturn in the middle. Natal Saturn is in the 3rd house at the bottom. So we're looking at the degrees, and the inner part at the bottom is the natal Saturn at 24 degrees. And it's directly in between Jupiter on the left-hand side and the two fluctuating degrees. As Saturn usually rules Cancer's opposite sign, Capricorn, this could mean that it is stopping the necessary enzymes required to speed up healing. Her progressed Saturn has moved to 28 degrees 58. So if you're looking down the bottom in the 3rd house, you now notice that Saturn has moved on to 28 degrees 58 in Cancer. And you can see it has moved just over 4 degrees. This places it now between the natal and progressed Uranus on the right-hand side in Libra in the 7th house. The constellations, houses and planets also have an external influence that explains how a person feels, or not so much how the person feels, but the situation surrounding them. What I'd normally do is a flow chart, and that places all the planets in order of degree. And I feel if I just work on what you see here, the 3 aspects that are squaring and opposing each other, I won't be able to explain the rest of the chart that melds in with it and doesn't cause the problems that you see here. In fact, there are other problems as well. But in saying that, what a flowchart is 4 pages long. So it is just too long to cover in the time I now have. So I'll have to leave it, and I hope that you've had an interesting time listening to this. Please leave a comment so I can always improve it. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.